2 hours by the time a replacement aircraft from Air India flies into Magadan. That's a remote town in the northeast of Russia to get more than 230 passengers of Air India who are stranded over there onto another aircraft, the replacement aircraft, so that they can continue their flight to San Francisco where they were originally headed. Yesterday, an Air India Boeing 777-200 LR aircraft, that is the aircraft that these passengers were on, had a technical issue with one of its engines. It was in the northeast of Russia at that time and had to make a precautionary landing in Magadan. But that's when all of these passengers ran into a lot of problems. Now, this is a small town. There are no hotels over there. And so a lot of the passengers, as you can see on your screen over there, have had to rough it out in dormitories, in basketball courts, etc. And getting a replacement aircraft out from India, from Mumbai, onto Russia to ferry these passengers onto their final destination has been difficult because of regulatory issues. So for these passengers, it's been an extremely long and difficult wait. But one small factor which is important, this is an area of Russia where temperatures in winter go down to minus 30 degrees. It's much warmer now. Therefore, the situation is relatively stable. But larger questions are being asked on the operation of Air India aircraft on this particular route. Remember, not many airlines fly into Russian airspace. India does because of our excellent ties with Russia, and this is an extremely profitable route for Air India as well. But if there is a precautionary landing that needs to be carried out, then you will run into infrastructure problems at the airport where these planes land. That's what this story is all about. In order to get an idea of just what the problems that passengers have been facing, remember this is an area, Magadan, which is 10,000 kilometers away from Moscow, the capital of Russia. To get an idea of just what the problems are passengers have faced, I spoke to a passenger, Gagan, earlier on, and we'll be joined live in a few moments from now from Air India passengers in Magadan.
Actually, Tuesday evening when we were nine hours into the flight, and we got the captain announced that there's some emergency and there's an engine glitch and they have to make a landing in Russia, Magadan, Russia, and that's when and later on, after a few minutes, he announced that we're going to dump some fuel while we were in the air. So they dumped fuel in the air, which was, very, very scary because we've never seen anything like that before. And then once we landed at around 8 p.m. on Tuesday, and it's been 24 hours, there's not much clarity as of now. There's over 230 passengers. A lot of children, a lot of older people are there. And we didn't get our bags yet. And the bags are in the aircraft. So we were shifted in different buses to different locations. And we got lucky. We have a place which is comfortable. It's a college dorm. But then there's other people that got onto buses that went to some school and they're lying. They have mattresses on the floor and toilet facilities are also not right. The language is a big barrier and food is very, very, different because I think it's a harbor port town and there's a lot of seafood and non-veg. So some people are just eating bread and, soup, and the older people are running out of medicine because we just have the handbags and it was a direct flight from Delhi to San Francisco. Clothes, most of them don't have their clothes. A lot of infants. So it's no clarity from the local authorities, but they're being nice. But there's a big language barrier. So We have no clarity, and all we understand is that the Russian authorities haven't given permission to land, and the flight hasn't taken off. The new plane hasn't taken off from Bombay.
All right. Well, joining us now live from Magadan, we've got Girvan Singh and Jaywan Singh, two young passengers who are stranded over there. Thank you very much, Girvan and Jaywan, for being with us. And don't look too scared. Your replacement flight is coming. It's on its way. And I can tell you, and you can tell all your friends and others over there, that in about a couple of hours from now, it will be landing. So 6 a.m. or so your time tomorrow is when it should actually be on the ground. That is information that we are now getting. But firstly, Girvan, let me ask you, how difficult has it been over there?
So for the first day, it was extremely hard for all of us. none of us was adjusted to the harsh cold weathers here, and it was extremely windy. So I was in half sleeves and shorts, and I realized, went outside, it was extremely chilly. And when we reached the hotel room, we had no food, we had no water for 2-3 hours in the night, and we got water around 3 a.m. in the morning. So the first day was extremely hard, but second day we could settle in. When the second day, the problem was a lot of people are vegetarians, and Magadan being a city like next to the harbor, we have not many options of vegetarian food here, and so people have to eat with fish or beef or chicken here. So vegetarian people cannot consume a lot of food. So they've been having bread and milk for breakfast and some soup.
Girvan, what about other passengers? I'm told other passengers have been in dormitories, some have been in basketball courts, and that's where they're staying?
Yeah. Yes. So luckily, our batch of bus was taken to the women's hostel in Magadan. So luckily, we are the lucky ones. And the hostels, I saw some videos, some people surface on the internet that 10 or 30 of them are sleeping in one classroom, which looks very uncomfortable for them. There are elderly people on the flight. There are infants on the flight. And I was sitting next to this 96-year-old elderly woman who was telling me that how she's going to San Francisco after 6-7 months, and she only has a limited amount of medicine for 1 or 2 days. So it's going to be difficult for her to manage it.
An 86-year-old passenger, is that what you said?
She told me around 93 or 94, 96, something like that.
Wow, that would be very difficult in that case for her. Jayavant, are you okay? You're with your brother. I hope it's not been very difficult for you.
No, it's not been too difficult. Just the first days when we had not gone outside the flight for a long time. So when we went out, it was very chilly. Then they took us in a bus. Luckily, it was heated. Then after that, we had not drank water for around 3-4 hours. But now, as my brother said, the second day everyone is settled in. Just the problem of the food.
Okay. And Girvan, I can tell you...
I would also like to
add
on, there's like a slight language barrier.
All right. And are people otherwise helping you over there? Are they being nice
except
to you?
for the food and the language barrier, I think the Russian authorities have been helpful to us. Like they have allotted us a translator who's been translating everything for us from the Russian authorities. So all of them are pretty helpful to us till now.
Okay, so your local flight, the Air India flight, is actually going to reach you at 6:30 your time tomorrow morning. That's an update that just come. We can actually confirm that. And I'd like to thank you both very much for speaking to us. I'm sure you'll all be absolutely fine, but it's been a difficult experience, no doubt, for you. Well, joining us now, Captain Amit Singh, and we're also joined by Parvez Damania, the founder of Damania Airways. Thanks, both of you, very much for being with us. So, two young passengers, Mr. Damania, that you saw over there. Couple of questions. Firstly, India operates one of the few carriers deep over Russian airspace. Now, this is an important route for Air India, but are there larger questions which arise when an aircraft faces an emergency or has to make a priority landing somewhere?
Vishnu, if you go on any of the sites, reservation sites, there is not a single flight showing on the reservation flight, because I think because of the Ukraine issue,
yes, all
the Western carriers have completely boycotted. So there is absolutely no other airline can reach that destination. Plus, it is an absolutely small town. The total population is 95,000, and it's absolutely in the middle of nowhere. So I can see the condition the passengers must be in. There must be no hotels or no setup there. So I think it's going to be very difficult, and I know it makes commercial sense for Air India to fly these routes, but Air India must seriously consider the repercussions and the implications of a situation like this arising. This airport is in the middle of nowhere, as we all are aware, and even from Moscow, it's a 7.5-hour flight. So now it's lucky that Air India has managed an aircraft, that they're sending the aircraft to pick up the passengers and get them back. Suppose it was a smaller carrier and they didn't have the facility of having an extra aircraft, what situation would have become? So I think one must reconsider the whole aspect of using this Russian airspace, as it is safe for passengers or not.
No, but why should it not be safe necessarily if there are divert airfields which are available?
No, it's perfectly safe. But my point is, if it's diverted to an airport that is so isolated, it's so remote, what kind of facilities and support services can be given to the passenger? That is an issue. It's not a safety factor.
Right. I understand it is a difficult situation. Air India, however, vouches for this particular route. It is the shortest route from to the west coast of America by Air India flying east. You swing across the North Pole and you use the Earth's curve, and then you fly along the American continent, the North American continent, and you reach San Francisco. So there is, it's much shorter. That makes it more attractive to passengers. B, these flights have been doing very well. So Air India reluctant to let go of that route.
No, it 100% makes economic sense to Air India, and I'm sure they will continue. And I think nobody must have expected an emergency of this sort. And I'm sure Air India is sorting out the issue now that they've arranged the second aircraft to ferry. I'm sure it'll be reached on time, but it has just put the passengers under unusual inconvenience.
And the other issue I wanted to ask you a little bit about, the entire issue of insurance of carriers which fly over Russian airspace. Is that a matter of concern as well?
No, I think it's an absolute matter of concern because no international airlines are flying that route. But now, like we said, it makes commercial sense for Air India. That's why it's continuing.
And what are some of the primary concerns for the benefit of our viewers that have arisen over operations over Russian airspace since the Ukrainian crisis began?
I don't know what technically the issues are, but I think something like this does cause a lot of inconvenience to the passengers.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. So there you have it, an idea of what the passengers are actually facing over there. It's been a fairly difficult situation, but fortunately they're going to be okay. Now the latest update which we have from Air India is that a relief flight from Mumbai to Magadan, Russia is now airborne. It's expected to arrive at Magadan at 6:30 local time, which as I understand it is 1 a.m. India Standard Time, and therefore a short time after that they will be able to actually carry on and to their flight to San Francisco. This is a flight which is being monitored by the US State Department as well. An Air India team on board, according to the airline, are there to provide any support that the passengers and staff at Magadan may require. I'm joined now by Captain Amit Singh, the aviation safety expert. Thanks very much for being with us. Look, there is a flight now. Air India has been able to actually get that flight on. What are some of the concerns about operating a commercial airliner to Russia in the event that a precautionary landing has to be made? Is insurance an issue? Are regulatory issues a problem?
Well, regulatory from the beginning when the Ukraine crisis started, the primary document which joins all the nations is the ICAO annexes or the conventions. Now, once you disconnect or if sanctions are imposed on Russia, wherein all the countries kind of bar Russia or do not operate to Russia, then what is the legality of those conventions, which other countries will not honor with respect to Russia? So we have to have our bilaterals in place between India and Russia to cater for all eventualities. So do we have these catered? I don't think so, because normally there is a convention, Annex 9 of ICAO, which is facilitation, that in case an aircraft is diverted, cancelled, delayed, etc., then the following facilities will be provided, including emergency visas on arrival, etc. So those are governed by the conventions. Now, in the absence of these conventions, which ICAO, if ICAO does not honor these conventions, then you have to have bilateral between the two countries, which I don't think we have gone to that advanced stage. And in case of a AOG, which what we call aircraft on ground, or a diversion, then we need special clearances for a non-scheduled flight, because this is not a scheduled flight. A non-scheduled flight clearance with AOG spares to be uplifted from India to Russia, along with engineers and other ground support facilities. When these flights operate under normal conditions through Russian airspace, there is always an agency which kind of facilitates the movement filing of flight plans, getting clearances from all the states through which the aircraft is flying. So they basically facilitate the ground support in case of a diversion. Air India will not have their staff at every airport en route. They have only to the stations they are operating to. So this particular agency with whom Air India has a tie-up will facilitate refueling, basic engineering services and other aspects. But hotel facilities, accommodation, that is something which is not defined either in ICAO documents nor in the passenger charter. If you see the Ministry of Civil Aviation passenger charter,
right.
Everything is defined. In case of a delay of more than 2 hours or 4 hours, then accommodation will be provided. But in case of diversion, there's nothing written.
But let me ask you a basic question, Amit. Is it safe? And I think this is important because a lot of people would be worrying, saying that, Magadan, it is in the far northeast of Russia. Why is it that, planes are landing over there? Is it unsafe? But I think the important point over here is that there are diverts, if not one, but two airports where available, where a big jetliner can actually divert. So in that sense, it's safe. You don't operate a flight for this long, or any flight for that matter, without diversionary airfields. And that is clearly available in Russia.
Correct. So when the route is planned from India to the United States, all the countries which fall in transit, be it Turkmenistan or Russia or Greenland, so even there, an airport has to be there within 60 minutes of flying time. That is the legal requirement. It can be extended depending on the type of aircraft and the facilities and weather availability to 120 and 180 minutes. So that we called extended divergent time operation. That is to cater for any eventuality, including one engine failure, pressurization failure, medical emergency on board. So if the pilot has to divert suddenly, then there has to be an airport within 60 nautical miles, 60 miles of flying time. So all these are all safety aspects which are catered while planning a flight.
Just to interrupt you, we've got images over there of the Air India relief flight actually going in. It's a Boeing 777-200 LR. It's taken off from Mumbai. It'll take about 9 to 10 hours flying time before it reaches Magadan, before it actually picks up the passengers. Presumably it might have to refuel there as well. But I think, Amit, the bigger concern also is that we fly these routes in winter as well. And therefore, in areas where there is minimum to no ground support for passengers, which is actually available, then that becomes a bit of a concern, because even getting off an aircraft in an area like Magadan, where I'm not sure there are any aero bridges, it becomes a concern. Heating, these are areas where temperatures go down to minus 30. In Magadan, I'm told there are no hotels to actually speak about. So in winter, that would have been an extra problem, a real one.
Yeah, that is a big issue, because Russia, north of Russia and Greenland, in case of a diversion, unscheduled landing in peak winters, that will be an issue. But primarily, it is about flight operation safety. These aspects are not looked deep into because they do not expect a stay of longer duration. There are regulations governing the stay, how much can a person stay in sub-zero temperatures, because in Russia and Greenland, temperatures can drop to minus 30, minus 40 in winters. And these people are not equipped, nor are the crew equipped with clothing for sub-zero temperatures.
Yep.
So that is as you said, is a bigger concern.
Amit, thanks very much for joining us. I'm just going to remind our viewers what this is all about. An Air India 777-200 LR aircraft on a scheduled flight AI 173 from Mumbai from Delhi to San Francisco had yesterday made a precautionary landing in the northeastern Russian city of Magadan. It's actually a town, very, very small. While the airfield is adequate, there are no support facilities as such for passengers, no hotels. So they've all been bundled together in dormitories, in basketball courts, a handful maybe in some sort of women's hostels, etc., etc. because of regulatory delays and permissions to actually get a replacement flight in the air, and that is the replacement flight taken off. It's been by the time this replacement aircraft gets into Magadan, it would have been more than 34 hours for these passengers on board that aircraft, the original aircraft, who were in Magadan and trying to sort out their situation. But finally that aircraft is underway. They'll be taken further to San Francisco, which is what their destination is. Larger questions being raised on the operation of Air India flights on this route, but as has been mentioned, these are safe flights. It's not a safety issue. There is an issue of passenger inconvenience that perhaps needs to be looked at very, very closely indeed.